So a while back I bought this tube bender from Woodward Fab, but with this tube bender, the stand that it goes on is sold separately. It's $100 and something, but for me, I'm trying to do everything on a budget, and I've got all this scrap metal laying around, so I just figure, hey, why don't I just build my own stand? So unboxing this thing and putting it all together is really simple and really straightforward. And you got your pins here where you can relocate everything and adjust it for your dies and all that sort of stuff. It's got this ratcheting system that's supposed to attach to this arm with this pin right here. And that's what pushes the arm around the die and bends your tube for you. And it also comes with this chunk of square rectangular tube that is your extender piece to get you some more leverage. But if we look at the bottom side down here, this is where the stand mounts to. It's got this little spacer right here so this pin can go in these holes and not hit the stand. And so now if we're looking at the pictures of the stand that Woodward Fab sells, you basically have three components. You have the base plate, and then the tube coming up, and then the pedestal for which it stands. One nation, under God, indivisible, until I weld it all together. On the Woodward Fab stand, it looks to be probably 2x4 if I had to guess, but I'm actually going to use this round tube because that's what I got. I think it'll work just fine. If we look at the Woodward Fab stand, it looks like the platform this thing sits on stretches almost to the middle of this third hole right here. My best guess from looking at the picture is that plate is probably 8 inches long. So I can go a little bit less from that since it's going to be really heavy on the front end. But the other thing you want to think about too is the backside is going to have the die and the big long piece of tubing sticking out of it too. So you want it to kind of be centered so you got good balance on the thing. Now this round tubing I have is roughly 2 3/8 outside diameter. So then really all I need to do is 2.5 inches behind this plate, and this plate's right about 4 inches. So I think that'll give me enough room to put a socket on here if I wanted to, or use the open end wrench or whatever. So now you're looking at 6.5 inches. So maybe I'll go 7. That'll give me a little bit more room. So first things first, I'm gonna make the pedestal. And again, looking at the picture, it looks to be about 1/2 inch or maybe a little bit thicker. So since I didn't have any of that, I've got a whole lot of this 1/4 inch thick, 3 inch wide flat sheet that I cleaned all up. So I'm gonna probably weld 3 of these together to make it 3/4 of an inch thick. I think that should be plenty thick to hold this thing in place. All right, I got this plate all done. It's 3/4 of an inch thick. Got my holes drilled out. Those holes were drilled out to 3/4 of an inch as well, matching the spacer block. Now the base plate normally is supposed to be anchored to the floor, but since I'm planning on using the air over hydraulic ram attachment instead of the ratchet bar, I'm actually gonna put it on this wheel right here. I have this old rusty wheel that's taking up space, and I don't have the space in my garage to actually mount it to the floor. I need it to be movable so I can use it and then move it. And this wheel has the Chevy bolt pattern, which is 5 on 4 3/4. So I have this template that you get at the swap meet for like $1. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna trace it out, and then I can use the holes where the lugs normally go to actually mount this plate to the wheel. So I've got this 1/4 inch plate I'm gonna use to make the base out of. So I marked the center line here, so when I put that post on there, it'll actually be in the middle. And that doesn't really matter too much, just as long as it's kind of in the center of where these bolts are gonna go. So I also punched in the center of these holes here so I can drill through them. Now I just need to sort of mock everything up because I need to measure for that down tube. Now here's the thing, I have this stand that my dad actually found at a yard sale. It's this really old worm gear jack that I think is going to work perfectly for holding up the tube as it goes through the bender, but it only goes so low. So I want to make sure that this post, when I cut it, is high enough to put my bender to where I can actually use this stand. So I also have to consider the thickness of the tube and where it sits in this V channel on this jack, and the thicker the tube, obviously the higher up it's going to be. And then on the tube bender itself, from where the die is going to be to the bottom where the plate's going to mount for the stand, with this spacer plate, you're looking at roughly 1.5 inches just for the plates alone. And then we got to figure out the halfway point, and as you can see, it's roughly 2 7/8. We'll call it 3 inches in between there, so we'll call it another 1.5 inches. So figure 3 inches above where the plate's going to mount is going to be the center of that die. This stand in the lowest position, bottom of the V, is about 32.5 inches from the ground. But remember, the round tube isn't going to sit all the way down at the bottom of the V. It's going to sit up, and depending on how wide the tube is, it's going to sit up even higher. So I'm actually going to measure all the way to the top, which is 33.5 inches. Remember, you can't ever cut it longer. So don't cut too much off, because I guess you could weld some more on, but that would defeat the purpose of creating a really stable stand for doing heavy duty work. So let's do some quick math. So if we call the top of that stand at its lowest point 34 inches, and the center point of the die is going to be 3 inches above the platform, and then we've got 3/4 of an inch for that platform, and then we got 1/4 inch for the plate at the bottom, so this total will be 4 inches. If we subtract that from the 34 inches, we have 30 inches. So if I'm doing my math right, that post should be 30 inches tall. All right, I have the platform kind of tacked in place, so we'll check the level. Perfect. Let's check it sideways. So within the black lines is within spec for me, so I'm gonna call that good. So here it is. Turned out pretty well, actually. Not too shabby. You can see under here, there's plenty of room. That spacer is working to put that long bar in there. Seems pretty well balanced. And you can see with the stand right here next to it, it's gonna work out perfect. Even though I put it up on this wheel, which is about 2 inches higher off the ground, which is okay because I can go higher. I can't really go shorter than the shortest spot on that stand. One problem I did run into, if you guys are building this at home, these bolts that came with it on the front here were not quite long enough. They didn't go all the way through the nylocks. So I'm gonna have to go to the hardware store and get a couple more bolts that are longer. I don't know if that's because I did the 3/4 and maybe their plate isn't quite as thick. I'm not really sure. Seems like those should be longer. But either way, I'm gonna get some new bolts and it'll be all good. So anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, and we'll see you next time.